let's get right to it. Jaimie Buss is a veteran sales leader with experience selling everything from SaaS to virtualization, storage, and networking. As she's currently the VP of Sales North America for Zendesk, leading a team of enterprise and commercial account executives. During her 20-year sales career, she has held sales and leadership positions at Andreessen Horowitz, VMware, Coverity, Meraki, Coraid, and Inktomi. Welcome, Jaimie.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for having me. I will go ahead and just share my screen if that's okay. So give me a second here and I will get this fired up. Well, thank you all. Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Sarah, for having me here today. I know Sarah gave me a great introduction. I don't want to spend a ton of time on this. The only thing that I will say, in addition to what Sarah outlined, is what gives me authority to be talking about management or leadership at all. Out of all these companies, I've been in a leadership or management role since 2004. So a good solid 16 years of trying to be better at this trade. So hopefully I can impart some of the things that I've learned along the way, and I can help give some ideas to our current and our future leaders, because I do think this is a super important discipline that is oftentimes undervalued, to be honest. One of the reasons why I put this talk together is because how do all of us in sales usually get into a leadership role? It's usually because we were a top rep. So you're a top rep, you perform really well consistently, and then you get tapped on the shoulder. Hey, have you considered a leadership or a management type of role? That's what happened to me. When I first started at VMware, I wasn't thinking management, but after several successful quarters of being in an IC role, I got the opportunity to lead a team. And what I found is that I really didn't know how to do that job well. And I didn't do it particularly well from the beginning. I like to think that, of course, not everyone, but hopefully most of the people that work for me today or have more so recently do enjoy having me as their boss. But I would say that I did have a little bit of a rougher start. So what I'm hoping to do is impart some of that knowledge to you guys. And one of the things I really want to hit home is, why does leadership or why does this matter at all? And that's because your people matter. Yes, you've got to hit a number, but you're not going to hit that number certainly by yourself. So you need to make sure that as a leader, you never want to see your top performers leaving to another job. That if it's moving from one job to the next, same level, that's not a great sign. That always concerns me. And one of the reasons we all should be concerned about that is because it does cost us about 6 to 9 months of an employee's salary to train that replacement. And in addition to that, us in sales know that just because you lost a headcount doesn't mean you lost the quota. So now you're carrying the same amount of quota with X amount of empty seats. And it really starts to become impossible to hit that number if you have enough of those empty seats. So we definitely want to hang on to our talent. Now, that doesn't mean we don't need to occasionally, manage out talent that perhaps it's not the right fit. I'm not going to focus on that today. Today, I'm going to really focus on keeping top talent and retaining top talent. I think performance management is kind of a topic in and of itself. Now, to make us even a little bit more nervous, right? It costs us this much money to replace someone. What's the number one people leave? It's us, right? The number one reason why people leave their job is a direct manager or supervisor or boss. I think we've probably all been in positions before, right? Where we've had really great managers that we would follow anywhere. And we've had leaders that perhaps we wouldn't follow anywhere, or we can sustain, we can put it up for a while, but eventually it could cause you to seek a new opportunity. And we don't, I never want myself or any leader on my team to be the reason why people leave their job. Now, really quick short story here. If I were to ask, who thinks they need to improve their leadership skills? Maybe some of you would be, yeah, that's why I'm here. And then others are like, oh, I've been leading a long time. What do I have new to learn? Well, this actually occurred in one of our senior manager meetings when I'm at Zendesk, where our people operations team had say, hey, listen, we're going to invest in leadership. And everyone at the senior director level and above, we're going to be going through this leadership program to further develop our leadership skills. And, I'm kind of internally going, oh, really? Like, I've been studying this forever. I give talks on this subject. Like, do I really need to be working on this? Which I know maybe sounds a bit arrogant, but I'm telling you, that's what kind of went through my head. And then I look around the room, very full room, and I think, oh my gosh, every single person in this room just thought the same thing. So it really was a very humbling moment for me to realize that, everyone thinks, like, if you're a manager, no one sits there and thinks I'm a bad manager, right? You're typically, you're not going to think that. So the truth of the matter is, in any discipline that any of us have, the key is, regardless of what you're doing, we can always get better. We can always practice more. We always can invest in that discipline. And I think it's important that we invest as management and leadership as a discipline. We're already great salespeople. We would not be in a leadership position if we weren't. So we need to make sure that we're treating this aspect of our careers as its own separate discipline, and that we invest some time and to learn it and to do better. So, can great leaders affect or influence your employees' engagement? So I really view employee engagement as the litmus test as to whether or not you're going to have high attrition or not. I'm going to get into what engagement means in a second. But before I do that, I just want to hit home that I think that any level of management in any type of an organization can absolutely impact the engagement of your employees. I mean, think about back in the day when we used to be able to go to a Starbucks. Maybe some of you can. We still can't. I'm in the Bay Area of California, so I'm still picking up things curbside. But, when you could go into stores, you could go into one coffee shop and it's run flawlessly, and they might remember your name. They get your orders right. The line moves very quickly. It's very organized. The employees are doing a good job. They're engaged. You could go to another coffee shop and the line is moving really slow. The orders aren't correct. They get your name completely misspelled out or whatever. Like there's just errors left and right. It's a very frustrating experience. My money would be on who's managing that shop. And the amount of pride that the employees have in their work, I think, is really a direct reflection of how they're being led and what the expectations that they have of what it means to do well at that particular job. So I really firmly believe, and I hope you guys do too, that us as leaders and managers can 100% influence the engagement level of our employees. Okay, so hopefully I've convinced you at least of that. Now, what is engagement and how the heck do we measure it? So I'm going to walk you through a little experiment that I ran with my own team. I used the engagement survey that's provided by First Break All the Rules. That's published by Gallup Press. I know it's an old book. I'm dating myself. Remember, I've been in leadership for 16 years, but I have read so many books on this topic. I've studied HBR for years on this topic. There are a lot of great articles in a lot of other books and in HBR and a lot of other sources as well. However, this one, if you guys have seen any of my stuff, you know I like really practical, usable stuff. I don't like high-level, fluffy things that I can't actually drive results from. So this, to me, was a very quantifiable way of assessing the engagement of my employees. And you can look through some of these questions. I'm not going to go and read them all, but simple stuff like, do people know what's expected of them? Do their opinions count? Does someone seem to care about them? Do they have someone they can confide in at work? These are all things that are outside of people's day-to-day of selling that does affect how they feel about their job. And for better or for worse, we as managers have a lot that we can influence here, right? So what I did was I told my team, I said, listen, guys, I really want to invest in leadership here at Zendesk. So I'm going to ask you to take this survey. It'll literally take you 5 minutes because you just score everything on a 1 to 5. 5 being you strongly agree, 1 being you don't agree at all. Rate everything on 1 to 5, and at the bottom, I'm going to include everything will be anonymized, everything will be generalized, so no one can tell what you've written, but a text box where you can put any kind of thoughts you like in there to help our management team or just help us in general support you better. So we did this 2 times. And the reason we did this 2 times is because the first time was to understand where our issues were. right? Because doing this survey in and of itself won't help you unless you have an action plan. You have a plan of taking this and turning it into something. How do you make this actionable? So what we did is we analyzed the survey, we identified what the gaps, and I told the team what the gaps were. And I'm going to share with you next some of those gaps and what we did about them. So you're going to see some of my, I'm going to open the kimono and you can see a bit about where we fell a bit short. Then we prioritized gap plans. So the frontline managers worked with their reps on what was challenging for their team in particular and their team score. And they collectively came up with a way that they were going to address that. Then as an org, we came up with programs that helped fill those gaps. And you can kind of see that in the deliver section here. And then 6 months later, we resurveyed everyone to see if our scores went up in the areas where we were not performing well. And the good news is our scores went up on all fronts. I think we had basically the things that were good held, and then the things that weren't as good went up. So I was really, really happy with the results. We're actually going to run the survey again in July. Obviously, a lot has changed since we last did this in the fall, so we're gonna rerun it. Obviously, I don't have the results of that. So let's get into what did we find about our own team that surprised me? One thing we found out is that we were not great at recognition. Well, I thought we were doing great at recognition. I mean, we had President's Club. I sent out a monthly note. I sent like a monthly newsletter to everyone telling them the state of the org. I highlight people that have done really well the prior month, from BDRs, SDRs, commercial reps, enterprise reps. I really tried. I felt like I was including everyone, which I was, but what was missing was the small little things that happen on a daily basis that were falling through the cracks. What happens when a rep saves a customer? I mean, we're SaaS, obviously, right? What if a rep does a great job saving a customer, but there's no revenue associated to it? Probably no one's going to ever see that. Or what if it's a really great competitive win, but the deal size wasn't super large, but we did a really great job beating the competition? That falls through the cracks. What if a customer sends a glowing email, which actually I love getting these. It just makes my day whenever I get one of these. That says, the reason I bought your software was how wonderful it was to work with so-and-so. They were super responsive. They were like everything the other competitor's vendor was not. The other rep was not. You're the reason, like this person is the reason why we bought your software. Those things were just lost. And so what we did was we realized that as leaders, we had to find a way to capture and share those things. And so what we did, I don't know if this is the best way. Maybe I'll have some better recommendations for this, but we spun up Slack channels for each of the teams and we shared it with everyone. So all of leadership is on it as well. And we just started sharing these little wins, and it gave people an opportunity to interact with emojis and, and threaded comments and whatnot. And that simple thing. And then what I did too is anytime I saw a remarkable win, I individually sent a, hey, congratulations. I really love how you did XYZ on this deal. So I take the time every time a size, a good size or a deal comes across my radar, I will individually email that rep and copy their manager and their manager's manager so that they know that I'm seeing these little things that are happening. So I really feel like I thought we were doing well, but actually we had a lot of improvement we could do, and we did. And I think we did a lot better, and we continue to do that going forward. Here was another thing that maybe should not have surprised me. I actually suspected this would be true, but it was a lot more stark than I realized. So what we looked at, the engagement score on the answer to these questions, do they have the materials to do their work? Their opinions seem to matter. And last year I've had the opportunities to learn and grow. These scored the highest in San Francisco, then in Madison, then in New York, and then a steep drop off for all of my field reps, right? Because I have both commercial and inside reps. The commercial reps are typically based in those 3 hubs, and then the enterprise reps are everywhere throughout North America. And I guess I did suspect that my remote employees would be less engaged, but I didn't think they'd be this much less engaged. And what I realized was we were releasing a lot of great programs, but we didn't really create it in a way that let the remote employees engage effectively. And that was problematic. So whenever we do a program now, I do the Rising Stars program, which helps future leaders learn. It gives them a 6-month interactive program with coaching and mentoring and interactive activities that train them on, hey, here's what you're going to be exposed to as a manager. So they can kind of try that on before they take it on as a role, and they can decide whether or not they want to be a leader. I made sure that every single activity was done in a way that encapsulated the remote employees. It was great because now I had to do everything as a remote employee. So all of my programming is now perfectly suited for Zoom by mistake or by happy accident. But before we weren't doing that, right? We didn't include them. If we had like product feedback we needed or mentorship, we didn't do a good job of making sure that our field reps were included into that. And that was a mistake, right? The field reps want to feel engaged too. They're already out on an island because they're out, doing their thing in their territory, but there definitely needs to be opportunity to engage those folks. So keep an eye on, if you've got multiple offices or people that are remote, keep an eye on those folks and make sure that you're building programming that includes them. And last but not least, of the areas where I felt like, personal growth. When I first started at Zendesk, we really didn't do a great job of promoting from within. So that was definitely a challenge. And we changed that. And then we have promotion from intern to SDR to BDR to commercial, to SMB, commercial rep, enterprise rep to management. So we've built this really nice program of helping people get trained from one to the next. But what I realized wasn't happening, if you look at these questions here where we scored low, it was 7 days were they given recognition? Is someone encouraging their development? In 6 months, has someone talked to me about progress? In the last year, I've had the opportunity to learn and grow. These questions scored low because of one main thing. We weren't consistently across the board. Leaders weren't asking their direct reports, what are your career objectives? What do you want to be doing in a year? What do you want to be doing in 2 years? That single question just wasn't being asked in one-on-ones. And because of that, even though we had career paths, people didn't feel that their manager individually understood what they were trying to do. Now, part of that is on the rep or the individual as well, especially as you get up in management. Don't expect, like at a level, I don't expect my boss to hand feed me what my next role is, right? I expect to be like, hey, here's a roadmap of what I'd like to do. Here's where I'd like to go. I'd like to understand from your perspective where my gaps are. So I think the more senior you get, you have to you drive that yourself. But think about it, like a commercial rep might not start that conversation. And so we as managers need to make sure that if the rep isn't at least starting that conversation, that we do, so that we understand where they're trying to get to. That was a really, really simple but important change that we made in our one-on-ones that we just need to constantly remind ourselves to do, to be honest, because this is a really easy one to forget. So I'll be curious to see how we do in July on this one, to be honest. I do get a little bit worried about this. It's also important when you are speaking of career growth, I just wanted to point this out, that it's really important to focus on both your rising stars and your rock stars. One thing I realized was I was sending out an email, like every 6 months, we typically have a lot of promotions. And I'd send out this big email congratulating everyone on what role they were getting promoted to. And the people that weren't really interested in getting promoted felt like, well, gosh, so I had people personally tell me, so do you perceive me as not doing a good job if I'm not trying to get promoted to this or that? And so what I ended up doing was I ended up posting a blog that I shared with the team that really iterated that there's this concept of rising stars and rock stars, which Kim Scott talks about in Radical Candor. Highly recommend that book as well. I think if you're a leader, it really helps you connect and communicate with your employees better. But in recognizing that I needed to tell the org that it's okay to be a rock star. It's fine to want to be a rep. You don't have to want to be a manager. I mean, we all know who are managers. This job is not for everyone. You make less money. You got pressure from coming up top. You're dealing with issues that are coming from the bottom. It's not the role for everyone, right? So we need to make sure that we're also recognizing and congratulating and supporting our rock stars who love being reps and have no desire to be anything else other than the rep or the role that they are. Then there's nothing wrong with that. So I really try to balance my communications so that I'm not over rotating and trying to and accidentally telling the whole org that they need to get promoted. All right, so I've got about 7 minutes left. I think I can get through these next couple of slides here with that time. So this is outside of the survey. So that's how we managed the engagement. I highly recommend you do it. That would be my CTA, is give it a try and see where your engagement is. I just wanted to end the talk with a couple of common management traps that myself and probably, if we're all honest, all of us have fallen into upon occasion. So the first is falling into the trap of the bad one-on-one. Now, if I could see you guys and this was a live event, I'd ask you to see a show of hands of who's been experienced bad one-on-ones. We'd probably all raise our hand, right? Your boss cancels the one-on-one. They answer Slack messages on their phone during the one-on-one. They just give you pass downs and really don't give you any type of opportunity to follow your own agenda or to talk about your career or get feedback on how you're doing. So we want to make sure that our one-on-ones are quality, that they are consistent, that we're doing them probably on a weekly basis, maybe bi-weekly, depending on how senior your direct reports are. I think I talk to my team all the time, but I have dedicated one-on-one time that if I can't make, I reschedule, I don't cancel. I don't ever cancel one-on-ones. I just might move them. If a customer meeting comes up and takes precedent, I'll move it, but I won't cancel it. I avoid distractions. I'm not checking email. I'm paying attention to them on the screen at this point, or in person when it used to be in person. And I'm providing feedback if I have it, and then brainstorming on any types of solutions. And I always have them bring the agenda. And if there's career things we're talking about, I always make sure that we're bringing that up as well. So we want to make sure that we have consistent one-on-ones, but they're also quality one-on-ones. So avoid the bad ones, because that's just a waste of everybody's time. Another common trap, and I see this happen a lot, it could be with field managers too, not just commercial managers. You don't want to become the super rep. And when you're a new manager, that's really easy trap to fall into, because you were a great rep and you probably got promoted because you were a great rep, but now you're the manager. And if you're managing 7, 8, 10 people, whatever, you can't run that whole thing by yourself. Right? You need your team to be able to perform. You have to become the coach. You can't fall into the super rep trap. The super rep will dive into a big deal and take it over. That's not scalable. What you need to do is coach. So do those monthly ride-alongs. Make sure that you're spending time with reps, with customers. And anytime, I go into a customer meeting with my team, we want to define those roles before we go in. So who am I connecting with? Who's my director or my RVP connecting with? What's my role? And then make sure if I'm observing, fine, as the manager or whatever those roles are. So you want to define that before you go in. And then afterwards, once Zoom doesn't matter, but back when you can visit people face to face, what went wrong? What went well? What didn't go well? And have the rep give that feedback of how they think the meeting went. So you want to use that as a coaching opportunity after the fact. So avoid the super rep trap. All right. And the last but not least, this is my last slide. This is the most dangerous, I think, and the easiest trap that a lot of managers that think they're being good managers fall into. So where does a good manager accidentally go bad and cause bad morale when they don't mean to? All right, the heat shield causes bad morale in this type of situation. Let's say that it's the beginning of the year, we need to add more headcount, we have high growth expectations, which I'm sure everyone on this call has, and you got to add more reps, you got to split some territories, okay? The native manager will say to the rep, yeah, I know this stinks, we shouldn't have to do this, I know how painful it is, like we're just going to have to deal with it. And they're being, the rep might not think the manager's doing a bad job, but what the manager's doing is they're allowing that rep to be in the red. They're feeling justified in their, they feel like this is unjust territory split. And anytime a rep feels something's unjust, you're definitely going to drive bad morale. The flip side of that is you say, listen, I get it. Like no one likes to lose anything in their territory. However, we've got aggressive targets this year. You're going to go from having 200 accounts to 125 accounts, but that's going to give us a lot of opportunity to focus there, and you have a lot of white space we haven't gotten into yet. So we're going to figure out a plan to make that work. So that's kind of the flip side of that. The cowboy is the rogue sales manager who doesn't want to go from the same playbook. Here's an example of this. Now that we're all remote, what I really want is better metrics of what's happening when my teams are interacting with their customers. What meetings are taking place? Who are those meetings with? How frequent are we meeting with a VP or the CIO? Now, to a native manager, this might seem like, oh my gosh, Jaimie's micromanaging. She's getting all up in our business. This feels really unfair. It kind of starts getting into that unfair aspect again, which again is going to drive bad morale. Instead, the way I'm looking at it, and if I'm a good manager, the way I'm going to position that is like, listen, like there's to some extent, yeah, we have to inspect what we expect, but we also need to understand how can we drive this deal to close more quickly, and how can we make sure we have enough power to get the deal done. So if we're not making sure that the right players are attending the right meetings, then our med pick, which you know is one of my other favorite topics, is going to be shot to heck, because I'm not going to be, necessarily meeting with the economic buyer. Maybe I don't have a champion. Maybe I really have a coach. And having better visibility into what's happening and who we're meeting with in our deals could actually help us make different decisions on how we drive the deal forward. So the cowboy, again, it really strikes into that, unfairness, which is going to drive bad morale with your team. You got to run one playbook. Like my boss tells me, sometimes I don't always agree. He tells me, Jaimie, you got to disagree and commit. And I do, because I'm a lieutenant and I've got to do, I might not, maybe I don't agree with everything, but at the end of the day, that's my job, is to make it be successful. And I'm going to do everything I can to do that. Last but not least is the buddy. It's really, really hard to be the buddy and the boss. It's really hard to go from being a peer to then being their manager, but you've got to be able to have the conversations with them. I've seen this happen so many times where we do a disservice to our reps by not, whoever we're managing, by not telling them areas that they can improve. We have to be strong enough to be able to tell them, listen, like, here's how you're being perceived. Or here's an area where we really need to work on, and here's why. Here's the impact of the business if we don't. We have to be able to have those conversations. If you're too nice, you're actually doing them a complete disservice. So I'm at the top of the hour, which I know I was supposed to wrap at 11, so I am. Thank you, Sarah and Colin, for having me, and I look forward to seeing anyone on the Slack channel if there's any questions.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Jaimie. As Jaimie mentioned, any of your questions, you can put them in that live chat Slack channel. If you haven't had a chance to get into that Slack channel yet, you can check your emails and you'll find that there. Jaimie, how else would people get in touch with you, or how else would they see your stuff if not in that Slack channel?
Yeah, certainly. So you can connect to me on LinkedIn. So just find me JBus and connect to me there. I have pretty much all of the material that is public that I've done. I've also associated to my LinkedIn account. So you can click on MedPick, or some of the leadership stuff I've done as well, should all be there. And then on Twitter, JFBus, Jaimie, or JF as in Francine, Bus is my Twitter handle.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you again for the amazing talk. And for those of you who are going to stick around on the live stream, Colin and I are just going to go into about a 30-minute break now before we go into the next talk. And the next talk will be on how to sell remotely in times of COVID-19. So stick around for the next kind of half hour or so. We'll chat about some of our favorite things from this morning. We'll chat about some of the things that are coming up in the PM session, and looking forward to all the talks we have next. Thank you so much again, Jaimie.
Thank you.